I was 3 blocks away from the restaurant when I realized my cell phone was not in my pocket. My heart raced, not because of the loss of the device itself, but because that phone held all the passwords to my bank accounts, digitized documents, and access to investments totaling millions of dollars. At 68 years old, I might not understand all modern technologies, but I have learned that a smartphone in the wrong hands can destroy an entire life. I immediately turned around and headed back to the Sunset Grill, where just a few minutes earlier I had dined with my family in a celebration that should have been joyful, but had left a bitter taste in my mouth that I could not quite identify. When I arrived, I found the door locked and the lights still on. Through the glass, I saw the waitress who had served us, a young woman with dark hair and piercing eyes, holding my cell phone and making an urgent gesture for me to knock on the door. I knocked on the glass, and she ran to open it, looking nervously around before pulling me inside and locking the door again. Her name tag said Lucy, and her hands were shaking as she held my phone as if it were a bomb about to explode. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice low and urgent, "I have to show you something. But first, you have to promise me you are not going to pass out. You have to promise to stay strong because what I'm about to show you is going to change your life completely." My stomach churned. "What are you talking about? What happened?" She pointed toward the corner of the dining room where a security camera was positioned, a camera that had a perfect view of the table where my family and I had just eaten dinner. "I've been working here for 6 months. Part of my training was learning the security system for emergencies, and today I saw something you need to know. Lucy, you're scaring me." "What did you see?" She guided me to the small office at the back of the restaurant, where a computer displayed several security camera feeds. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, rewinding the footage to the exact moment I got up from the table to go to the restroom, leaving my son David with his wife, Faith, and my grandson Mike, with his girlfriend Valerie, chatting happily. Or so I thought. "Watch," she whispered, turning up the audio volume. The camera had a microphone and caught absolutely everything. What I saw on the screen made the blood freeze in my veins. The moment I disappeared from their sight, the happy expressions evaporated like morning mist under the sun. David, my only son, looked around to make sure I was truly out of earshot. Then he leaned forward, his voice low but perfectly clear on the audio. "We have to speed this up. He's starting to ask questions about the investments. Yesterday, he asked me why the account had strange activities." Faith, my daughter-in-law, whom I had welcomed into the family like my own daughter, replied, "How long until we get the declaration of incompetency?" Mike, my grandson, the boy I had rocked in my arms and watched grow up, chimed in, "Dr. Sanders said we can have the paperwork ready in 2 weeks. He just needs him to sign during one of the routine visits. He will tell him it is just a standard checkup." I felt my legs grow weak. Lucy held my arm, supporting me. "Keep watching," she said softly. There is more. Valerie, Mike's girlfriend, whose law school tuition I had helped pay for, was running her hand up and down David's arm in a way that was definitely not appropriate. "And once we have control of the money?" David smiled, a smile I had never seen on his face, predatory and cold. "Then, my love, we can finally live our lives together. How long do you think a 68-year-old man survives in a second-rate psychiatric ward? 6 months? A year at most?" Sarah, my wife, who always treated me with such sweet affection, laughed. "And we split everything. 50% for you and Valerie. 50% for Mike and me. Everyone rich, everyone free." Mike looked at his father, and I saw tears in his eyes. "I still do not know if I can do this. He is our grandpa." "He is an obstacle," David replied coldly. "And obstacles are meant to be removed. Do you want to keep living in debt, or do you want the life we deserve? Think about your future kids, the education you could give them." The recording continued for 5 more minutes. 5 minutes of my family. The people I loved more than my own life, meticulously planning to rob me, commit me against my will to a psychiatric institution based on forged documents, and leave me there to die while they divided my fortune. When the recording reached the point where I returned from the restroom, and everyone instantly put their loving family masks back on, Lucy paused the video. I did not cry. I did not scream. I just stood there, staring at the frozen screen, looking at the faces of the people I had raised, the people I had loved and sacrificed everything for, planning my destruction with the same casualness they would use to discuss a dinner menu. How did you... My voice came out steadier than I expected. How did you know I needed to see this? Lucy looked at me, and for the first time I noticed her eyes were the exact same color as mine, an unusual greenish-brown. Because, Mr. Miller, I have been waiting for this moment for a long time, waiting for the right moment to show you who these people really are. Why? Do you know me? Not exactly, but I know your story. I know your first wife, Mary Ellen. You know her because... She took a deep breath, her hands shaking, because she was my mother. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Mary Ellen, my first wife, the love of my life, the woman who had built a department store empire from scratch with me, and who had passed away from a massive heart attack 15 years ago, leaving me a devastated widower at 53. The woman I had sworn never to replace until I met Sarah 5 years later, naively thinking I had found a second true love. Your mother, I repeated. My mind was struggling to comprehend. Mary Ellen had a daughter? A daughter from a previous relationship before she met me? My mother died when I was 5 years old. My father tried to include me in her life, but you never knew. He thought it would be too painful for you since you two could not have any more children after David. Every word was a revelation, a bomb. Why are you telling me this now? Why? Lucy said, her eyes meeting mine with fierce intensity. Because you are in danger, and because I have evidence. Not just of this conversation, but of much, much more. Things that are going to make this video look like child's play. She plugged a USB drive into the computer. 3 months ago, when I found out who you were, I started investigating. I followed David. I recorded conversations. I documented meetings and what I discovered about your family. Show it to me, I said, my voice now hard as steel. Show me everything. Because if there is one thing 68 years of life have taught me, it is that knowledge is power. And I was about to become very, very powerful. And those people who had dined with me less than an hour ago, risking everything to plan my ruin, had no idea what was about to hit them. Nobody messes with Richard Miller and gets away with it. Nobody. To understand the magnitude of the betrayal I had just discovered, I need to go back in time and tell you how I built this family. Or rather, how I thought I had built it. My name is Richard Miller. I am 68 years old, and for most of my adult life, I thought I knew the meaning of the word family. Today, looking at this paused video, I realized I had spent decades living a carefully constructed lie. I was born into nothing. My father was a bank teller, and my mother was a seamstress. I grew up watching my mother work late into the night to supplement our income, her fingers bleeding from sewing so much. I swore I would never live like that. I swore my children would have everything I never had. I met Mary Ellen when I was 24 years old. I was working as a cashier in one of her first department stores. She only had 3 back then, small but full of potential. Mary Ellen was 26. She was ambitious, smart, and saw more in me than just a simple employee. She saw a partner. We got married 6 months later, in 1980. The first few years were tough. We worked together, 12, 14 hours a day. I handled the accounting, the suppliers, and the management. Mary Ellen took care of the expansion, the negotiations, and the strategic vision. We were a perfect team, and when David was born in 1988, I thought my life was complete. David was a sweet boy with curly blonde hair and blue eyes just like his mother. Mary Ellen adored him. She built the empire not just out of ambition, but to give him a secure future. On Sundays, she would close all the stores and spend the day with David. She took him to the park, to the movies, and taught him how to play soccer. She was a present mother in a way my own mother never could be. When Mary Ellen passed away in 2009, I thought my world had collapsed. A massive heart attack at 50 years old. She was in her office reviewing contracts, and she just collapsed. By the time I got to the hospital, it was too late. She was gone without a final word, without a goodbye. The fortune she left behind was considerable. The chain of stores had grown to 30 locations, along with real estate and investments. It was estimated at around $38 million back then. But what shocked me the most was discovering during the reading of the will that everything was in my name. Absolutely everything. Mary Ellen always said you were the brains behind her success, the lawyer explained to me. She wanted to ensure you would never depend on anyone. Your son will receive his share whenever you decide, or when you pass away. But as long as you are alive, you control everything. David was 21 at the time, freshly graduated with a business management degree. I thought he would be happy that his father was financially secure. I was wrong. "Dad, this is not fair," David said that night after the funeral. "Mom built this for us too. Why is everything in your name?" "Your mother trusted that I would take care of you," I replied, surprised by his reaction, "and that is what I will do. You will have everything you need." But everything he needed was never enough. David graduated and wanted to start a construction company. I gave him $50,000 as initial capital. The company went bankrupt in 2 years. Bad management, bad contracts, excessive spending. He came back asking for more. I gave him another $30,000. Same story. David married Faith in 2011. I bought them a condo in an exclusive area of the city as a wedding gift. 2 years later, he wanted a bigger house. I bought it. Then he wanted to upgrade his car. I bought it. The insanely expensive private schools for my grandson, Mike, I paid for them. And through all of this, I thought I was being a good father. A generous father who made sure his son would never know the hardships I had known. Sarah entered my life in 2014, 5 years after Mary Ellen passed away. I was 58 years old and had abandoned the idea of romance. But Sarah was charming, attentive, only 3 years younger than me, and she said all the right things, that I was handsome, smart, that I deserved to be happy again, and that Mary Ellen would have wanted me to move on. I met Sarah at a charity event I had organized. She was an interior designer, a successful one, she claimed, with an impressive portfolio. I discovered much later that her success was fabricated. Her projects were minor roles in much larger firms, and she was actually bankrupt and desperate. But at that moment, I was lonely. David had his own family, and the nights alone in my big house were suffocating. Sarah filled that void, or rather, I allowed her to fill it. We got married after 2 years of dating, a small ceremony, just close family. David was visibly unhappy with the marriage. "Dad, you barely know this woman," he whispered while I was getting ready. "She only wants your money." "Sarah has her own career," I replied defensively. "She does not need my money." Oh, how wrong I was. After the wedding, things began to change subtly. Sarah would suggest investments. "I know people, Richard. We can multiply your fortune." Always your fortune, never ours, as if she were doing me a favor by helping manage it. I allowed her to get involved in the finances. We set up a joint account where I deposited $2 million for investments. Sarah took charge of it along with David, who claimed to have studied the financial market extensively. Together, they managed that part of the fortune. Faith and David became regulars at our weekly dinners. Valerie, Mike's girlfriend, became my shopping companion. On the surface, we were the perfect family. The widower who had found love again, the devoted son, and the affectionate daughters-in-law and family members. But there were moments, little moments, that I chose to ignore. where the mask slipped, like when Sarah was furious because I refused to sell 2 of the department stores. They are unproductive properties, Richard. We could do so much more with that capital invested. Or when David exploded because I refused to fund his 3rd failed business venture. You do not trust me. You have never trusted me. Or when Faith cried because I refused to buy them a $500,000 vacation home in Miami. Other parents want their kids to be happy, but you just want to control everything. Every incident was followed by apologies and hugs. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm just stressed. And I, desperately wanting to believe that my family loved me, accepted their apologies until today. Until this dinner that was supposed to celebrate Faith and David's 15th wedding anniversary. Sarah suggested the Sunset Grill. It is your favorite, honey. Let's do something special. Now I understand. It was all planned. They chose that restaurant because they thought it was safe. Because they never imagined a camera would capture everything. Because they never imagined someone would be watching. Sitting in that office, looking at Lucy, this young woman who claimed to be Mary Ellen's daughter, I realized something fundamental. I did not have a family. I had a criminal syndicate, and syndicates must be dismantled. Lucy, I said, my voice now firm and resolute, show me everything you have, every piece of evidence, every recording, every document. She nodded, her fingers flying over the keyboard again. Brace yourself, Richard, because this is going to get a lot worse before it gets better. I am ready, I replied, feeling something inside me harden, something that had been dormant since Mary Ellen's death. I did not get to where I am by being weak. I was ready. Ready to uncover the whole truth. Ready to confront every lie and ready to destroy those who dared to betray me. Because the kind, generous Richard, who believed in the best of people, had just died in that video. And the man Mary Ellen had loved, the fighter, the strategist, the survivor, had finally returned. Lucy brewed some coffee while we organized all the evidence on the table of that small office. It was 2 a.m. The restaurant was empty and quiet, except for the 2 of us. I felt like I had aged 10 years in the last few hours, but with the exhaustion came something else, a sharp clarity, a cold determination that I had not felt since the days when I built the retail empire alongside Mary Ellen. Let's organize this chronologically, Lucy said, opening a notebook. You need to understand not just what they are planning, but how they got here. The conspiracy did not start yesterday. She placed a stack of bank documents on the table. This started 3 years ago, shortly after your marriage to Sarah. Look at these transactions. I examined the papers. They were account statements I recognized, investments Sarah had convinced me to make, the stock fund she managed. I put in $2 million initially, I muttered. Yes. And look here, Lucy pointed out a series of transfers. For the first 6 months, everything looked legitimate. Normal investments, small profits. But then the offshore transfers started. Small ones at first. 20,000 here, 30,000 there. Amounts that would not immediately raise red flags. I traced the paper trail with my finger, watching my money slowly disappear. In total, almost $2 million over 3 years. She had been meticulous, patient, a true long-term predator. I felt bile rise in my throat. Almost $2 million stolen right under my nose. And David was involved from the beginning? No. David came in about 18 months ago, which coincides with the exact same time the affair between Sarah and Valerie started. Lucy placed another set of photos on the table, pictures of Sarah and Valerie, going in and out of hotels, restaurants, even a trip to Miami that Sarah claimed was for an interior design conference. Did Valerie seduce Sarah, or was it the other way around? I asked. Hard to say, but I have this. Lucy played an audio file on her laptop. The quality was decent. It was clearly recorded in a public setting, but the voices were distinguishable. It was Valerie and a friend talking at a coffee shop. The file date showed it was recorded a year ago. Don't you feel guilty? The friend asked. Cheating on your boyfriend with his stepmother? Valerie laughed, a cold, calculated laugh. Guilty? Why, Mike is a loser. He already tanked 3 businesses that his rich grandpa funded. Sarah, on the other hand, is smart. She has plans. And when we get all that money, Mike can have his crumbs, while Sarah and I live the life we deserve. What if they find out? They won't. Richard is naive. He trusts everyone. Mike is too stupid to connect the dots. And even if he gets suspicious, it will be too late. Once he is committed, the money will be under Sarah's control as his legal guardian. Game over. The recording continued with more details about the plan. How Sarah had met Dr. Sanders through contacts in the medical black market. How they had chosen a private psychiatric facility that asked few questions as long as they were paid enough. How they had calculated that I would not survive more than 6 months to a year under heavy medication and isolation. When the audio finished, my hands were shaking with rage. How did you get this? Valerie is careless when she thinks she is safe. She likes to brag. And me? Well, I have my methods. Lucy did not elaborate, and I did not press the issue. And David? I asked, returning to the subject that hurt the most. My son, what did you find out about him? Lucy sighed, her expression softening. David is complicated. He is not evil like the others. He is just weak. She showed me a series of text messages exchanged between David and a friend. Messages Lucy had managed to access through methods I preferred not to question. David, I don't know if I can do this. He is my dad. Friend, but you said it yourself. He controls everything. He never lets you be independent. David, he gives us a lot, but always with strings attached. He always needs to approve everything. It is suffocating. Friend, think of it as what is best. Professionals taking care of him and you having the resources to live your own life. David, Sarah says the same thing. She says I am being sentimental, that in the end it is better for everyone, including him. Friend, she is right. You deserve to be happy. David, I just wish there was another way. I read the messages with a broken heart. David knew it was wrong. He knew, but he allowed himself to be convinced, rationalizing the betrayal as liberation. There are more conversations like this, a lot of them, Lucy said softly. David hesitating, Faith pushing him. She is very manipulative. She uses the future as leverage. Think of the opportunities they will have. Do you want them to grow up under Grandpa's control or be free? And he always caves, because deep down David wants the money, too. He just does not want to feel guilty for wanting it. Lucy placed another document on the table. This one was particularly sinister. It was a contract drafted by a lawyer, dividing my fortune among the conspirators. For Sarah and Valerie jointly, 25%. For David, 25%. For Mike and Faith, 25% each. Have they signed this yet? I asked, my voice freezing over. Not yet. They are waiting for you to be committed first. But look at the date. It was drafted 3 months ago. 3 months. While I was having dinner with them, buying gifts for my future grandkids, believing I was the beloved patriarch of a united family, they were drafting contracts to divide my remains, like vultures over a carcass. And Dr. Sanders? I asked. Who is he, really? Lucy opened a different file, showing me the doctor's background. Charles Sanders, 64 years old, medical degree from 38 years ago, specializing in geriatric psychiatry. But look at this. She pointed to a series of ethics lawsuits. 3 cases in the last 10 years where families alleged he had falsely diagnosed dementia or mental incompetence. In 2 cases, the lawsuits were mysteriously dropped, likely financial settlements. The third resulted in a 3-month suspension of his medical license, but he appealed and won. He does this professionally? My voice was barely a whisper. He diagnoses false incompetency for families who want to seize control of inheritances? Exactly. And he gets paid very well for it. I found transfers from Sarah to one of Dr. Sanders' accounts. $10,000 deposited 2 weeks ago as an upfront payment for his services. I looked at all the evidence spread out before me. Videos, audios, bank documents, contracts, text messages. It was a fully built case file of conspiracy, fraud, and planning of illegal confinement. Is this enough to prosecute them? I asked. Criminally? Absolutely. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, forged documents. Sarah could get 5 to 10 years in prison, and Dr. Sanders could get the same. David and Valerie, as accomplices, maybe 3 to 5 years. Mike's fate would depend on how a prosecutor views his level of involvement. And civilly, you recover everything that was stolen, plus punitive damages. You annul the marriage to Sarah, based on fraud. You disinherit all of them. You leave them with nothing. Absolutely nothing. The irony was delicious. They were planning to leave me with nothing. No freedom, no dignity, no life. And now I could do the exact same thing to them. But something was bothering me. Lucy, why did you do all of this? This is not just about a promise to my late wife. There is something else. She stayed silent for a long moment, staring down at her own hands, because I also had a family that used me, manipulated me, and tried to control the inheritance Mary Ellen left me. I managed to escape, but it cost me years of legal battles, therapy, and having to rebuild my life. And when I discovered that you, the man my mother loved more than anything in the world, were going through the exact same thing, I could not just sit back and watch. Did you hate my existence? I asked softly. I was the husband who replaced your father. No, Lucy shook her head. My father died when I was 6 years old, and before she died, my mother told me that you were the only true love of her life, that she was grateful for every single day she had with you. How could I hate that? Tears burned my eyes, the very first ones I had shed since watching that terrible video. Mary Ellen talked about you in her final days at the hospital, when she knew she was going to die. She made me promise I would watch over you from afar, to make sure nothing bad ever happened to you. And I failed. Her voice cracked. For 3 years they stole from you, and I did not even notice. I only discovered the plan 2 months ago when Sarah and Valerie had dinner here, and I overheard them talking. Since then I have been collecting evidence. You did not fail. You saved me. Lucy wiped her eyes. So what do we do now? Are you going to the police? I pondered this carefully. The police would mean legal justice, but it would also mean public exposure, scandal, and drawn-out court battles. And the man who was going to utterly destroy them was just getting started. Lucy made more coffee, and I realized the night had turned into dawn. Through the office window, I could see the first lights of the new day painting the sky in pink and orange. But before planning our counterattack, there were things Lucy needed to know. Things about me, about my fortune, and exactly why my family was so desperate to get their hands on the money. Do you know how much I actually have? I asked. Lucy shook her head. Sarah and the others think it is $38 million. That is the number they always bring up when they talk about Mary Ellen's inheritance. And it's not? I smiled bitterly. When Mary Ellen died 15 years ago, the fortune was worth $38 million. But I am not just the widower who inherited money and sat around counting pennies for the last decade and a half. I kept working, developing, investing. I took my phone, which Lucy had carefully kept safe, and opened my banking app. I showed her the numbers. Her eyes widened. $96 million? I whispered. 96 million. 200,000 to be exact. I sold 12 of the department stores to a large national chain for an excellent price. I kept 11 that are incredibly profitable. I invested heavily in real estate. I have 17 rented commercial properties, stocks, mutual funds, and some startup investments that performed phenomenally well. Mary Ellen taught me well, and I learned even better. Lucy whistled softly. So they do not even know what they are truly fighting for. No, because I was careful. Sarah manages that $2 million fund, or managed it before she started stealing from it. She sees the accounts for the stores I still own. She thinks she knows everything, but the vast majority of my wealth is in private investments, handled by a financial advisor I met through Mary Ellen, and he is absolutely discreet. They are going to find out when they try to take control as your guardians. Exactly. And that is when their greed is going to get even uglier. I took a sip of coffee, reminiscing. But I did not start out rich, Lucy. Do you know my story? Only the basics. That you married my mother young, and that you built the business together. So I told her. I told her about growing up in a poor family. My father, a mid-level bank clerk who was never promoted. My mother sewing until her fingers literally bled. I told her about meeting Mary Ellen when she only had 3 small shops and massive dreams. Your mother was a visionary, but I was the one who made the numbers work. I negotiated with suppliers. I found ways to cut costs without sacrificing quality. I managed the cash flow. While Mary Ellen dreamed big, I built the foundation that made her dreams possible. You were true partners. We were in absolutely everything. And when David was born, we worked even harder. We wanted to give him everything we never had. I paused, the memories stinging like old wounds being reopened. We tried to have more kids after David. 3 pregnancies that ended in miscarriages. The last one almost killed Mary Ellen. The doctor said she could not try any more without serious risk to her life. My mother never mentioned that, because it was painful for her too. She wanted a big family, but she accepted reality. We focused on David, on the business, and on each other. I looked at Lucy, really seeing her for the first time. Mary Ellen's eyes, the shape of her face, but with features that must have come from the father she never knew. If I had known about you, it would have made a difference. We could have included you. My mother did what she thought was best, Lucy said softly. She supported me financially. She visited whenever she could. She was not a present mother, but she was a mother who cared. She loved me, but she loved you more. And that is okay, because the love she had for you was the kind they write stories about. Pure, true, with no hidden agendas, unlike Sarah. The name did not even need to be spoken, but it hung in the air. Tell me about her, Lucy asked. About Sarah. How did you fall into her trap? I sighed. Loneliness. It is as simple as that. 5 years after Mary Ellen's passing, I was lost. The business was doing great. David had his own life, and I was coming back to a huge, empty house every single night. And then I met Sarah at a charity event, an event she attended specifically to meet rich widowers. Her observation was biting, but most likely true. She was charming, attentive, and she knew exactly what to say. Now I see that it was all calculated. She investigated me beforehand. She knew my history, and she knew exactly which buttons to push. And she claimed to be a successful interior designer. Yes, with an impressive portfolio that, I later discovered, mostly consisted of jobs where she was a minor consultant, not the lead designer. But at the time, it seemed legitimate, and I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe I could have love again. Do not blame yourself. Predators like Sarah are experts. I should have seen the signs. The way she was always interested in my finances. How she suggested investments. How she slowly took more control. I shook my head, but I was blind. It was not even love, I realize now. It was just the illusion of companionship. And did your son support the marriage? David was against it initially. He said I barely knew the woman. But Sarah was smart. She won him over gradually, faking concern for Mike, offering advice on Faith's business ventures. David was the easiest. Sarah offered to help him with the investment fund. She claimed she had contacts. David was impressed. And that is how Sarah gained access to the money? Yes. I suggested creating the $2 million fund for her to manage, thinking it would be good to have the extra help. Mary Ellen had always handled the majority of the investments, and I was not entirely confident in myself at that scale. Sarah seemed to know what she was doing, so I trusted her, and she started stealing almost immediately. She waited 6 months, establishing legitimate patterns first, building my complete trust. Then she started with small diversions that gradually increased. I looked at the bank statements on the table. Almost $2 million now, money I worked decades for, stolen in just 3 years. Lucy touched my hand gently. But you still have 94 million that she does not even know exists. You still have the power, Richard. So much power. And I am going to use every single dollar to destroy them, I promised. Now that she knew my story, Lucy deserved to know the details of that dinner. Because every moment, every word, every gesture I had interpreted as family love was actually a carefully choreographed performance. Sitting in that office with Lucy, I forced my mind to revisit every single second of that evening. Seeing now, with my eyes wide open, what I had previously viewed through the distorted lens of blind trust. The dinner was scheduled for 8 in the evening. Sarah insisted we take my car. Yours is more comfortable, honey. But now I realize it was to ensure that I would be the one driving, that I would be focused on the road, distracted enough not to notice the meaningful glances exchanged between them during the ride. We arrived before the others. Sarah requested a specific table. That one in the corner, please. It is more private, pointing exactly to the table right beneath the security camera. At the time, I thought it was out of consideration for our privacy. Now I know they wanted a secluded spot where they could talk freely when I was not around. David and Faith arrived first. My son looked sharp in the tailored suit I had bought him the previous month, a $3,000 suit from a luxury boutique. He hugged me tightly. He called me his dear dad and commented on how happy he was that we were all together. Family is everything, isn't it, Dad? He said, squeezing my hand. I do not know what we would do without you. Those words now echoed in my mind with a sinister meaning. I do not know what we would do without you. Without my money, he meant. Without my resources. Without my fortune to sustain the lifestyle he had grown so accustomed to. Mike and Valerie arrived 15 minutes later, apologizing for the delay. Valerie was especially affectionate, sitting right next to me and holding my arm. You look radiant, Richard. That new cream I recommended works wonders. Valerie always called me Richard, never Mr. Miller, or even Grandpa. I used to find it intimate and affectionate. Now it just sounded incredibly fake and manipulative. She was 28, beautiful in a very calculated way, bleached blonde hair, long red nails, and clothes that were always just a bit too tight, and the way she looked at David when she thought no one was watching. How had I never noticed that before? The dinner started with champagne. Sarah placed the order, an expensive bottle. $500. We are celebrating 15 years of David and Faith's marriage. It deserves the best. With my money, of course. Always with my money. The conversations flowed smoothly, superficial, cheerful, and entirely empty. Faith talked about a new project at work. Mike mentioned a business opportunity that would be absolutely perfect if he only had the capital to invest. A clear signal that I ignored at the time, but now clearly see as yet another attempt to extract cash. Dad, David said, leaning forward, have you thought about simplifying your investments? Consolidating everything into a single fund would be much easier to manage. I have a buddy at the bank who could help you out. I'm fine as I am, I replied, and looking back now, I noticed how his smile faltered for a fraction of a second, how his eyes immediately met Sarah's in a look that clearly said, he is not cooperating. Faith quickly changed the subject. Dad, have you thought about taking that trip to Europe you always dreamed of? You and Sarah could stay for a month, maybe even 2 months. Just enjoy yourselves. We would take care of everything back here. Taking care of everything, meaning having full, unrestricted access to my finances, my businesses, and my properties. And if something were to happen to me while I was out of the country, an accident, a sudden illness, I politely declined. Maybe in the future. I have too many things to take care of right now. Another look, this time between Faith and Valerie. The food arrived. Expensive orders. Filet mignon, lobster, imported wine. No one even bothered to look at the prices on the menu. Why would they? Richard pays. Richard always pays. It was during dessert that Sarah mentioned, entirely too casually, that she had made an appointment for me with a new doctor. Dr. Sanders, an excellent geriatrician, a friend of a friend. It is just for a routine checkup, honey. At our age, it never hurts to be cautious. At our age, as if 68 meant I already had one foot in the grave. I do not think that is necessary, I answered. My current doctor is fantastic. But Dr. Sanders is a specialist in, well, in memory issues, cognition, things like that. Sarah smiled, but her eyes were cold. You have been so distracted lately, honey. You forgot our appointment with the accountant last week. You did not even remember Faith's birthday? It was a blatant lie. I had not forgotten a single thing. But everyone around the table nodded solemnly, reinforcing the narrative. It is true, Dad, David said, his voice dripping with fake concern. I have noticed it too. The other day you called me and you didn't even remember that we had already spoken that morning. That had never happened. But there he was, my own flesh and blood, fabricating a history of mental decline that did not exist. It would be good to do the checkup, Mike added, just as a precaution. We do not want it to get to the point where you cannot take care of yourself. Not being able to take care of myself. The words were carefully chosen, legally significant, the foundation for a declaration of incompetency. Valerie touched my arm, her red nails digging in like claws. Do it for us, Richard. We are so worried. You are so important to all of us. Important, but not loved, never loved, only important as long as I was useful, as long as I had money, as long as I could be controlled. It was right after that when I got up to go to the restroom. Excuse me, I murmured, grabbing my wallet. I should have taken my phone, but I left it sitting right there on the table, a mistake that turned out to be the greatest stroke of luck of my entire life. In the restroom, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. I saw a well-preserved 68-year-old man, neatly trimmed gray hair, discreet makeup. Yes, Sarah had convinced me to use a little foundation, and elegant clothes. I saw a man who had worked relentlessly, built an empire, raised a son, and survived the crushing loss of a great love. I saw someone who was being slowly destroyed by the very people he trusted the most. But at that moment, I did not know it yet. I still thought the strange looks were just my imagination. I still foolishly believed that when I returned to the table, I would find my loving family waiting for me. I took a deep breath, adjusted my jacket, and went back. And there they were. Wide smiles, lively conversations, hands reaching out to me in gestures of pure affection. Perfect. All perfectly rehearsed. Everything okay, Dad? David asked. You took a while. I was just thinking, I replied as I sat down, about how lucky I am to have all of you. And they smiled. Dear God, how they smiled. The smiles of wolves circling a wounded prey. We finished dessert. Sarah asked for the check, which I paid, obviously. $2,000 for dinner. A small price to pay, they must have thought, compared to the millions that would soon be securely in their hands. We walked out together. We said our goodbyes in the parking lot with hugs and kisses. I love you all, I said. We love you too, Dad, David responded. And now, replaying the moment in my head, I remembered a brief flash of something in his eyes. Guilt, hesitation, or perhaps just the sheer skill of a seasoned liar. I drove home with Sarah, who sat silently, staring out the window. It was a good night, she said faintly. It was, I agreed, completely unaware that in just a few minutes I would discover it had actually been the worst night of my life. Because it was when I parked in the garage and reached for my phone that I realized I had left it behind. And it was when I went back to get it that Lucy was waiting for me with the ugly truth. Lucy pressed play again, and this time we watched the entire recording from beginning to end without interruption. Every single second was a stab to the gut. Every single word was a renewed betrayal. But I forced myself to watch it all, to burn every detail into my memory, because I knew I was going to need this rage. I would need this pain transformed into pure fuel for what was coming next. But there has to be more, right? I asked when the video ended. You said you had much more. Lucy opened another folder on the computer. This is from 3 weeks ago. I managed to record them when they had dinner here, without you. The new video showed Sarah and Valerie sitting at a different table in an even more isolated corner. There was absolutely no pretense between them now. Sarah had her arm wrapped intimately around Valerie, and Valerie was practically sitting on her lap. "When are you going to leave him?" Valerie asked, running her fingers gently through Sarah's hair. "After we have the money, not a second before. If I ask for a divorce right now, he keeps everything. But if he is declared incompetent first, and I am the legal guardian, I control it all. Then I can do whatever I want. And David does not suspect a thing about us?" Sarah laughed. "David is an idiot. He only thinks about money. As long as he believes he is going to get rich, he never questions anything. And Mike just has too much of a conscience. He is the weak link, but his greed is much greater than his guilt. He will fall in line." Valerie kissed Sarah's neck. Kissed. "I cannot believe that in just a few weeks we will be free. Free and rich." "You are worth the wait," Sarah murmured, kissing her deeply in a way that made it glaringly obvious this was not some recent fling. Lucy paused the video again. "I have evidence of at least 18 months of an affair between them. Dinners, hotels, trips they took together while you thought Sarah was away at work conferences. 18 months. A year and a half of being utterly betrayed, not just financially, but romantically, with my own grandson's girlfriend, right under my own roof." "Lucy," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "tell me your complete story. Who are you, really? Why are you here? I need to know everything." She settled into the chair across from me, wrapping her hands tightly around a coffee mug. "My full name is Lucy Harris. I was born in 1996, the daughter of Mary Ellen and Peter Harris." "Peter," I repeated the name. "Your mother never mentioned him. She would not. Peter was a youthful mistake." Those were her words, not mine. They met when she was 20 years old. He was 22. They dated for 6 months before she found out she was pregnant with me. My mother wanted to do the right thing. She offered to get married. But Peter refused. Why? Because she loved him enough to realize that he did not love her in the right way. So she made a deal. He would support the baby financially. He could visit, but he did not need to marry her or assume a public fatherhood role. Mary Ellen would raise her daughter all by herself. "That was incredibly brave of her," I said softly. "It was," Lucy replied, "but it was also very difficult. My mother worked 3 jobs to support us. Even with the money my father sent, she had too much pride to depend entirely on him. I grew up seeing her exhausted but never bitter. She always said I was the best decision she had ever made." Lucy's voice trembled. "She died when I was 5 years old from breast cancer that spread before it was detected. In those final months, it was my mother who took care of her, paid for all the treatments, and stayed right by her bedside. She always worried about her. I believe she did care for her, as a friend, as the mother of her daughter, even if not as a romantic love. And when she died, my mother took me to live with her. I was 5 years old. David was 13. Yes, and my mother was already completely invested in her family, in the business with you, in the son you shared, so she made a choice. She hid me, yes. She bought a house for me and hired a nanny in another city. She visited whenever she could on weekends when she told you she was traveling for business. Birthdays, always. She was present in the way she could be, but I was never a part of her public life. I felt a sharp pang of sadness. sadness for that little girl who had lost her mother and then was hidden away by her second mother. You must have felt so lonely. I did, but I also understood, even when I was little. My mother explained it to me when I grew up. She said she loved you more than anything in the world, that David was her absolute pride and joy, and that revealing my existence would only cause pain, especially after the miscarriages you two had suffered. My hand went instinctively to my chest, a phantom memory of ancient pain. She told you about that? She did. She said you desperately wanted more children, that every single loss devastated you. How could she just show up and say, "Oh, by the way, I have a secret daughter from before I met you"? It would have destroyed you. I do not know if it would have, I admitted honestly. Maybe at first, but children are not responsible for the circumstances of their birth. I could have learned to love you. Tears shimmered in Lucy's eyes. It means so much to hear you say that, because I spent my entire life wondering if my mother's husband would hate me if he ever knew I existed. I do not hate you. How could I? You saved me. Lucy stood up, went over to a small cabinet, and pulled out a metal lockbox. She opened it with a key she wore on a necklace and took out a yellowed envelope. This is a letter my mother wrote a week before she died. She held it out with trembling hands. I opened it and read Mary Ellen's familiar handwriting. My dearest Lucy, if you are reading this, I am gone, and I am deeply sorry for not being the mother you deserved in life. Keeping you a secret was cowardice on my part, not consideration. I was terrified of losing Richard, of hurting David, of complicating the perfect life I had built. But in doing so, I denied you the family you deserved. I ask you to watch over Richard from afar. Do not reveal your existence unless it is absolutely necessary, but observe him, protect him, because I fear that after my death, people will only see his money, not the person he is. And Richard deserves to be loved for who he is, not for what he has. You are my daughter just as much as if I had raised you myself. You carry my intelligence, my determination. Use it to do the good I failed to do in life. With eternal love, Mom. I finished reading with tears flowing freely. She knew. She knew I would be vulnerable. She knew, and she made me promise, Richard. Promise to protect you. So when she died, I started watching you from afar. I saw when you met Sarah. I saw the wedding. And initially I thought everything was fine. You seemed happy. I seemed happy. Then 6 months ago I got this job at the Sunset Grill. Not by chance. I found out it was David's favorite spot and that your family dined here frequently. I figured if I worked here, I could keep an eye on things and make sure everything was okay. And that is when you found out. Yes, 2 months ago, Sarah and Valerie had dinner here. They sat at that exact table in the corner, and I heard them talking about the affair, the stolen money, and their plans to get even more. I was in total shock, but I was not sure what to do. So I started investigating. Yes, I followed Sarah to the hotels where she met with Valerie. I recorded conversations whenever I could. I hired a professional to hack into some email accounts. I found out about Dr. Sanders, about the involuntary commitment plan, and the more I uncovered, the more horrified I became. She looked right at me. I was going to tell you 3 weeks ago. I had planned to approach you, but then you stopped coming to the restaurant. David said you were too tired to go out, and I realized they were isolating you, setting the stage to officially claim mental incompetence. So I waited. You waited for the right moment, the moment when I would have undeniable evidence, and when you would be here to see it. And yesterday, when Sarah booked a table for the family dinner, I knew it was the perfect opportunity. I installed extra cameras. I made sure the audio was crystal clear. And when you forgot your phone, it was the opening I desperately needed. It was fate, Lucy said firmly. My mother, wherever she is, made sure you found out the truth. I looked at this young woman, my stepdaughter, I realized. We had absolutely no blood relation, but we were intimately connected through Mary Ellen. And she had saved me when my own blood family was actively trying to destroy me. Thank you, I said simply, for keeping the promise you made to your mother, for protecting me when no one else would. You do not have to thank me. It is what family does. Family. The word had a brand new meaning now. Then Lucy leaned forward. Let's plan exactly how we are going to destroy your enemies. Our enemies, I corrected her, because you are in this with me now. And when we are done, I want you to know you will have a permanent place in my life if you want it. Her eyes filled with tears again. I do want it. I have always wanted it. Then let's finish this, I declared, and let's build the family Mary Ellen wanted us to have. Lucy spread a massive mind map out on the table, a complex web of connections between Sarah, Valerie, David, Mike, Faith, and Dr. Sanders. Every single line represented a conspiracy. Every node was a piece of hard evidence. The investigative work she had done in just 2 months was absolutely astonishing. We have to be meticulous, she said, circling Dr. Sanders' name with a thick red marker. One mistake, and they run. They destroy evidence. Or worse, they accelerate the commitment plan before we are ready. Then we play their game better than they do. I picked up my phone. First things first, I have to act like absolutely nothing has changed. Like I am still the naive Richard who blindly left that dinner last night. Sarah must be wondering where I am. I looked at the time. 6:30 in the morning. She would be waking up soon. I needed to get back home before she got suspicious. I started typing a message, but Lucy grabbed my hand. Wait. Think about every single word. She has manipulated you for years. She knows how to read your text messages, your tone. You cannot sound any different. She was right. I took a deep breath and thought about exactly how the Richard from yesterday would write. The Richard who still foolishly trusted his wife. I typed, Honey, I am with my friend Arthur. I could not sleep after dinner. I was feeling off. I came over to talk. I will be back soon. Kisses. Lucy read it and nodded. Good. Casual. It will not raise any red flags. Arthur is real, and he would lie for me if necessary. We have been friends for 40 years. You trust him completely? I thought of Arthur, who had stood right by my side when Mary Ellen died, who had helped me navigate the worst days of my entire life. Yes. Then we will need him. One more person on our side, Lucy made a quick note. But first, you need to go back home. Act completely normal. What kind of evidence do we still need? Lucy opened a secure file on the laptop. This is what we have right now. Video of the conversation at the restaurant. Audio recording of Valerie. Bank statements showing Sarah's embezzlements. David's text messages. It is a lot, but it is not everything. What is missing? Direct proof against Dr. Sanders. Proof that he absolutely knows he is issuing false medical reports. Documentation of the payment system. And above all, an audio recording of him actively attempting to falsely diagnose you. The appointment on Tuesday. Yes. You will wear a hidden recorder. We will capture every single word. If he does exactly what Sarah paid him to do, we will have medical malpractice right on top of conspiracy. I nodded. And then? Then we confront them? But not alone. We will need the proper authorities. Police, prosecutors, maybe even the media. It needs to be public enough so they cannot just sweep the case under the rug. Robert, the name of my financial advisor, popped into my head. Robert White has contacts absolutely everywhere. Prosecutors, judges, investigative journalists. If anyone can orchestrate their total public downfall, it is him. Mary Ellen trusted him. And in 15 years, Robert has never once given me a reason to doubt him. Besides, I looked at Lucy. He helped you. That says it all. Lucy smiled. Then let's bring him in. But Richard, there is something you really need to consider. David. She pulled up the text messages again, the ones where my son was hesitating. He is the most conflicted. If we approach this right, we might be able to turn him against the others. You want me to give him an out? You think he can be useful? If he is faced with the ultimate choice between prison and cooperation, between losing everything and saving something, he might choose to help you. I thought about that. David, my only son, a part of me wanted to absolutely destroy him, right along with the others. But another part, the paternal part that never completely dies, wanted to save him from himself. I will think about it, I finally said. But first, the plan has to be flawless. Lucy nodded and began listing exactly what we would do over the next 4 days, leading up to the fateful appointment. Day 1. Friday. Today, you go back home. Act completely normal. I will continue my surveillance of Sarah and Valerie. We contact Robert White discreetly. Day 2. Saturday. The family lunch that is already scheduled at my house. David mentioned it at dinner. I will start acting strangely. Minor memory lapses, slight confusion. You will install hidden microphones all over my house. Day 3. Sunday. We intensify the symptoms so Sarah feels incredibly confident. Secret meeting with Robert White to set the legal trap. I will gather even more evidence on Dr. Sanders. Day 4. Monday. Dress rehearsal. You will pretend to be especially confused. Sarah will likely emphasize the heavy importance of Tuesday's appointment. Final positioning of all our pieces. Day 5. Tuesday. The appointment with Dr. Sanders. Recording everything. And then, the ultimate confrontation. It is risky, Lucy said, especially faking dementia. If you overdo it, they might try an emergency commitment before Tuesday even arrives. They will not. Sarah is extremely patient, methodical. She wants to do it all legally with the proper paperwork. Otherwise, it makes it way too easy for me to contest it later. You know her well. I thought I knew her. Now I realize I was only looking at the mask she wore. I stood up and put my phone away. I have to go. The longer I am gone, the more suspicious it looks. Lucy walked me to the door. Richard, one last thing. Are you ready for what comes next? For completely destroying your family? I looked deep into her eyes, Mary Ellen's eyes. They destroyed themselves when they deliberately chose to betray me. I am just making sure they pay the price. Even David? I paused. David gets one chance. Just one. Depending entirely on how he reacts when the truth finally comes out. But the others, my voice hardened. Sarah, Valerie, Mike, Faith, they get absolutely no mercy. Neither does Dr. Sanders. They plan to lock me up, drug me, and leave me to die in a psychiatric ward. I'm going to make sure they experience a real prison. Lucy nodded. Then let's do this right. No mistakes. I walked out of the restaurant as the sun fully rose, bathing the city in a golden light. It was a new day, and over the next 5 days, I would meticulously prepare the greatest revenge of my entire life. I drove home slowly, rehearsing every facial expression, every single word. When I walked in, Sarah was in the kitchen, dressed in her robe, drinking coffee. Her eyes narrowed slightly when she saw me. Richard. Where were you? I was worried sick. I'm sorry, honey. I forced a tired smile. I could not sleep, so I went over to Arthur's. I just needed to talk. Is everything okay? Just tired. It was a long night. I poured myself a cup of coffee, noticing how she watched me carefully, looking for signs of what I knew, or just coldly calculating her next moves. By the way, she said casually, I confirmed your appointment with Dr. Sanders. Tuesday at 10 in the morning. You won't forget, right? It is important. Important why? It is just a checkup. Yes, but at our age these checkups can catch things early. Better safe than sorry. Her smile was absolutely perfect. Rehearsed, even though I wanted to throw the boiling hot coffee right in her face. All right, I will not forget. I took a sip of coffee, keeping my hands perfectly steady. Oh, and David mentioned a lunch here tomorrow. The whole family. That will be nice, won't it? It will be great. The word family tasted like bitter ashes. I finished my coffee and went upstairs to the bedroom, saying I desperately needed to rest. I locked the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and for a brief moment allowed myself to feel the crushing weight of it all. The betrayal, the pain, the blinding rage. But then I hardened myself again. Crying was a luxury I simply could not afford right now. I had work to do. I grabbed my phone and sent a coded message to Robert White. I need your services urgently. Delicate matter. Can you call me from a secure line? The reply came in minutes. Calling in an hour. And when he called from a number I did not recognize, I told him absolutely everything. Every gruesome detail, every piece of hard evidence. Robert listened in total silence. When I finished, he just said, "Richard, we are going to destroy them. Legally, completely, and permanently. Send me everything you have, and get ready, because what I am going to put together will be an absolute masterpiece of justice." I smiled. A smile with no humor, no joy, just pure, unfiltered determination. I am ready. And I was. The game had officially begun, and this time I held all the winning cards. Saturday arrived with clear blue skies. Sarah had prepared everything for the family lunch. David, Faith, Mike, and Valerie were arriving right at noon. Lucy had come by early that morning, disguised perfectly as a cable company technician. Sarah did not even give her a second glance as she installed tiny microphones in the living room, the dining room, and even in our master bedroom. All set, she whispered to me before leaving. Every single word will be recorded. When the family arrived, I began my grand performance. During lunch, I conveniently forgot where I had put the napkins. I searched in 3 completely different places before Sarah found them in the obvious drawer. "Are you okay, honey?" she asked with fake concern. Yes, just a little distracted. I mixed up the name of one of my future grandkids during the conversation. "How is Jason?" I asked Mike. "It is Matthew, Grandpa," Mike corrected, exchanging a quick, meaningful look with Valerie. "Oh, right. Matthew. Sorry." I told the exact same story twice, an anecdote about the old days with Mary Ellen. The first time, everyone listened politely. The second time, just 15 minutes later, I saw the knowing glances. David leaned forward. "Dad, are you sure you're all right? You seem really distracted today." "I'm fine, son. Just didn't sleep well." I saw the deep satisfaction gleaming in Sarah's eyes. I saw Mike whisper something to Valerie. I saw Faith taking careful mental notes. They were building their medical case, and I was happily letting them. After lunch, when everyone had finally left, Sarah hugged me. "I am worried about you, Richard, these memory slips. The appointment on Tuesday is very important." "I know, honey." I let her see me looking vulnerable. "I am a little worried, too." "Do not worry. I am here. I will take care of you." Judas kissing Christ right before the ultimate betrayal. On Sunday, I seriously ramped up the symptoms. I completely forgot an appointment I had supposedly scheduled with Sarah. I got terribly confused about what day of the week it was. I asked twice if we had already eaten breakfast. Sarah documented absolutely everything. I saw her typing frantic notes into her phone, building her damning file. That afternoon, I went out, claiming I was going for a long walk. In reality, I met with Robert White at a highly discreet coffee shop. "I have everything ready," Robert said, sliding a thick folder across the table to me. "A prosecutor specializing exclusively in elder fraud. 2 undercover detectives ready to move, and I have contacted a highly trusted investigative journalist. When this blows up, it will be plastered on the front page. And the recorder for Tuesday?" He pulled out a tiny device, state of the art. "We will hide it securely in the lining of your jacket. It records up to 6 hours of crystal clear audio, completely impossible to detect without a professional sweep." "Perfect." Robert looked at me, dead in the eye. "Richard, are you absolutely sure about this? Once we start, there is no going back. Your family will go to federal prison." "They are not my family anymore," I replied. "They are criminals who just happen to share my last name. And yes, I am absolutely sure." Monday was the hardest day by far. I had to fake extreme confusion without overplaying my hand. At breakfast, I purposely put my shirt on inside out. Sarah had to point it out to me. Honey, your shirt is inside out. I looked down, faking deep surprise. Really? I did not even notice. I saw the victorious gleam dancing in her eyes. She thought I was completely falling apart. That night in bed, Sarah held my hand. I had to use every ounce of willpower not to pull away in disgust. Tomorrow, when you see Dr. Sanders, be honest with him, okay? There is no shame in admitting if you are having serious difficulties. All right, I will tell him everything. You are so strong. She kissed my forehead. We are going to take care of you, I promise. Promises from a pathological liar meant absolutely nothing. I did not sleep at all that night. I stayed awake mentally reviewing every single step of the plan. Tomorrow was the day. Tomorrow Dr. Sanders would step right into the trap, and then the crushing justice would follow. At 3 a.m, I got a text message from Lucy. Everything is ready. Tomorrow changes everything. Mary Ellen would be so proud, I replied. Thank you for being the daughter she raised. Tomorrow, we get justice. I closed my eyes not to sleep, but to visualize what was coming. The appointment, the recording, the confrontation, the cold steel handcuffs snapping securely around their wrists. Sarah slept soundly right next to me, completely oblivious that her entire world was about to violently collapse. In just a few hours, the end would begin, and they had absolutely no idea what was waiting for them. Tuesday dawned with a dark, cloudy sky, threatening heavy rain. Sarah insisted on driving me to the appointment. I want to be there to support you, she said. Translation. She wanted to make absolutely sure I actually went in and did not get suspicious and run off. Dr. Sanders' office was located in a discreet medical building, a sterile waiting room with old magazines, a bored receptionist, and that distinct hospital smell that always made me slightly nauseous. Sarah sat next to me, holding my hand, the absolute perfect picture of a devoted, loving wife. The audio recorder Robert White had provided was safely tucked away in the lining of my suit jacket. Tiny, highly powerful, and impossible to detect without professional equipment. Robert had guaranteed its quality. It would capture every single breath. Mr. Richard Miller, the receptionist called out. I stood up, and Sarah stood up with me. Do you want me to come in with you? No, it is fine, I forced a tight smile. It is just some routine tests. Okay, I will wait for you right here. I walked into the office. Dr. Charles Sanders was exactly how I had pictured him. Early 60s, neatly combed gray hair, expensive glasses, impeccable white coat, a highly respectable appearance, the absolute perfect mask for a ruthless criminal. Mr. Miller, a pleasure to meet you. Please have a seat. His voice was incredibly smooth and professional. Your wife called me, expressing some deep concerns about certain symptoms you have been having. Would you like to talk about it? And so it began. Seemingly innocent questions. Do you feel confused? Do you forget things frequently? Do you have trouble following conversations? I answered yes to everything, exaggerating just slightly. I talked about the memory slips from the past week. He wrote everything down, nodding with fake clinical understanding. Then came the cognitive tests. Simple memory questions, basic math problems, time and space orientation exercises. I deliberately failed a few of them. Not all of them. That would be way too obvious. But just enough to look like I was experiencing a genuine mild cognitive decline. Dr. Sanders frowned, looking deeply concerned. Mr. Miller, I am going to be perfectly frank with you. These test results are troubling. They point to the possible early stages of dementia. Dementia? I let my voice shake. But I feel fine, just a little tired. Denial is very common in the beginning, but look, he turned his computer monitor around to show me a screen full of complicated charts. That meant absolutely nothing. Your results are consistently below what is expected for a man your age. And considering your family history, I do not have a family history of dementia. I paused, just for a second. Your wife mentioned that your father had some cognitive issues. in his final years. A blatant, disgusting lie. My father died of a massive heart attack at 72, completely lucid until his very last breath. But there he was, Dr. Sanders, building a fake medical history, right in front of my face. Really? I feigned total confusion. I do not remember that. You see? Another sign. He leaned forward, his voice dripping with false compassion. Mr. Miller, I strongly recommend we consider an intervention. There are specialized facilities that can assist you to ensure your overall safety. But I live with my wife. Even so, she works. She cannot be with you 24 hours a day. And if something were to happen while you are alone, a bad fall, or forgetting to turn off the stove. He was legally building the case for my involuntary commitment, exactly as Lucy had predicted. And what if I do not want to go to a facility? His polite smile never wavered. Then we would work with your family to ensure proper supervision. But frankly, based on what I am seeing here today, I truly believe professional round-the-clock care would be best. I am going to prepare a detailed medical report and my recommendations. Your wife can come pick it up tomorrow. Tomorrow? That fast? In cases like this, speed is of the essence. The sooner we begin the appropriate treatment, the better. Treatment. The medical code for heavy drugs that would make me docile and confused, actively validating his completely fake diagnosis. I understand. I stood up. Thank you, doctor. He stood up as well, extending his hand. We are going to take excellent care of you, Mr. Miller. You have my word. Another entirely empty promise. I walked out of the office. Sarah jumped up immediately. So? What did he say? He said it might be dementia, that he wants to put me in a facility. I let real tears well up in my eyes, not out of sadness, but out of barely contained burning rage. Sarah wrapped her arms around me. I had to force my body not to recoil in absolute disgust. You don't need to be afraid. I am right here. We will do whatever is best for you. Whatever was best for me, never for her. Always hiding behind that sickening fake concern. In the car ride home, Sarah was practically buzzing with excitement. She tried her best to hide it, but I could see it clear as day. We will pick up the report tomorrow, and then we will decide on the next steps. Okay. Okay, indeed. But the next steps would definitely not be the ones she was actively imagining, because when we pulled up to the house, there was a car parked out front. A car Sarah did not recognize. But I certainly did. It was Robert White's car, and stepping out of it was Robert himself, looking every bit the ruthless lawyer he was, accompanied by 2 plainclothes police officers. Sarah slammed on the brakes. Who were those people? Justice, I replied, my voice no longer shaking but hard as solid steel. That is justice, Sarah. I got out of the car before she could even fully react. Robert approached, smiling a very tight, professional smile. Mr. Miller, I brought the people you requested. This is Mr. Philip Ross, a prosecutor specializing in fraud and elder abuse. And these are Detective Martin and Detective Lewis. Sarah scrambled out of the car, looking wildly confused and starting to panic. Richard, what is going on here? What is happening? I turned to fully face her. It is over, Sarah. The game is over. I know everything. I saw the exact second it finally clicked. I saw the sheer, unadulterated panic ignite in her eyes, before she desperately tried to force her mask of control back on. No what? What are you talking about? I know about the $2 million you stole. I know about the sordid affair with Valerie. I know about your sick plan to have me locked away based on a completely fake diagnosis. I know about Dr. Sanders and exactly how much you paid him. I know absolutely everything. Prosecutor Ross stepped forward. Mrs. Sarah Collins, I have a search warrant for this residence and all your electronic devices. I am also authorizing your immediate detainment for questioning regarding suspicions of heavy financial fraud, conspiracy for illegal confinement, and embezzlement. This is ridiculous. Sarah tried, but her voice cracked horribly. Richard is just confused. Didn't you hear what the doctor said? The doctor you paid $10,000 to write a fake report? I interrupted. We have hard evidence of everything, Sarah. Videos, audios, bank statements, everything. The detectives stepped closer. Mrs. Collins, you need to come with us. And that was when Sarah completely broke down. She actually tried to run. She genuinely tried to sprint away, as if she could somehow escape the inevitable. The detectives grabbed her in 3 quick steps, snapping the cold handcuffs onto her wrists as she screamed, "Richard, stop this! We can talk! We can work this out! Please don't do this! You should have thought about that," I answered coldly, "before you planned to lock me up and let me slowly rot in a psychiatric ward." As they were dragging her away, another car aggressively pulled up. Mike and Valerie. They had undoubtedly come over to see exactly how the doctor's appointment had gone. They stepped out of the car and completely froze when they saw Sarah being shoved into the back of a police cruiser. "Richard?" Mike started walking toward me, but the detectives immediately blocked his path. "Mike Miller and Valerie?" Detective Martin asked. "Yes, but we also have some very serious questions for you regarding your active participation in a fraud conspiracy." All the color completely drained from Valerie's face. Mike desperately tried to play innocent. "What conspiracy? I have no idea what you are talking about." "You know exactly what they are talking about." A new voice rang out. Lucy stepped out of another car that had just pulled up to the curb. "You know very well, and I have recordings of you two planning every single part of it." Mike stared at her in total confusion. "Who are you?" "I am Lucy Harris, the daughter of Mary Ellen, and the person who painstakingly documented every single crime you committed." The sheer shock on their faces would have been almost comical if the whole situation had not been so utterly tragic. And then the final car arrived. David and Faith. My son stepped out, took one look at the chaotic scene playing out in our driveway, and instantly started crying. "Dad! Dad, please, let me explain. Please." I just stared at him. "Can you explain how you meticulously planned to lock me up? How you sat down and signed legal contracts, dividing up my money while I was still alive? I didn't want to. I tried to tell them it was wrong, but they—" He pointed frantically at Sarah in the back of the police car, then at Mike, then at Valerie. "They pressured me." Prosecutor Ross walked right up to him. "Mr. David Miller, I have hard evidence of your direct involvement." However, he looked over at me. "Your father suggested that you might be willing to fully cooperate, to testify against the others in exchange for total immunity." David looked at me, a violent battle of hope and sheer desperation raging in his bloodshot eyes. "Dad, would you really do that for me?" "One chance," I answered. "Just one single chance. You confess everything, you testify against all of them, and maybe, just maybe, we can try to rebuild something someday." He collapsed right there on the pavement, sobbing uncontrollably. I will tell them everything. Please forgive me. Please." I did not answer, because forgiveness was something that was going to take a very, very long time. As they hauled them all away, Sarah, Mike, Valerie, Faith, all heading downtown for intense interrogation, I stood entirely alone in front of my house with Lucy and Robert White. "Is it over?" I asked quietly. "No," Robert said. "Now comes the legal part, the trials, the proceedings. But Richard, they will never, ever be able to hurt you again. Never." I looked at Lucy. "Thank you for everything." She smiled softly. "You are welcome. It is what family does. Family." Maybe there was still some hope left for that word after all. That night, sitting alone in my house for the very first time in years, I walked out onto the patio. The rain had finally arrived, washing the streets clean, clearing the heavy, suffocating air. And I finally allowed myself to cry. Not for them, but for the family I genuinely thought I had, for all the wasted years, for the deeply betrayed trust. But I also cried tears of sheer relief, because I was finally free. Free from the manipulation, free from the lies, free from living in constant fear. Tomorrow the brutal legal process would officially begin. But for tonight, sitting out in the rain, I simply existed. I existed as Richard Miller, 68 years old, a survivor. And that, I realized, was more than enough. 6 months have passed since that devastating yet ultimately liberating day out in front of my house. 6 months of grueling testimonies, hearings, shocking courtroom revelations, and finally, real justice. Sitting here now on the patio of my house, a house that feels so much bigger and infinitely lighter without the heavy presence of betrayal. I watch Lucy out in the yard, planting the white roses that Mary Ellen always loved so much. The legal process was absolutely brutal, but highly meticulous. Robert White orchestrated the entire thing with the precision of a master conductor leading a symphony. Every single piece of evidence was presented at exactly the right moment. Every witness was perfectly prepped, and every single move was calculated to ensure there was zero chance of escape. Sarah was the very first to fall, and she fell incredibly hard. The prosecutor presented the bank statements showing the $2 million she had systematically siphoned off over 3 years. The recordings of her and Valerie planning not just to rob me, but to guarantee my natural death inside an institution. They presented the contract dividing my fortune before I was even declared incompetent. And perhaps the most damning evidence of all, the $10,000 wire transfer straight to Dr. Sanders. Her defense attorney tried to argue that it was all just talk, fantasies, nothing concrete. But when the prosecutor played the video from the restaurant, the video Lucy had captured, showing Sarah clearly saying, "How long do you think a 68-year-old man survives in a second-rate psychiatric ward? 6 months? A year at most?" The jury did not even need 2 full hours to deliberate. Guilty of first-degree fraud, guilty of embezzlement, guilty of conspiracy for illegal confinement, guilty of attempted exploitation of a vulnerable elderly adult. The sentence, 15 years in state prison, with absolutely no possibility of parole for the first 8 years, plus full restitution of the $2 million stolen and an additional $500,000 in punitive damages. I watched closely as they read her sentence. Sarah, who had always been so meticulously controlled and composed, completely broke down. She cried. She begged. She promised she would give everything back, but it was far too late. And when her eyes finally met mine across the packed courtroom, there was nothing but pure hatred staring back at me. The hatred of a predator who had just been completely outsmarted by its prey. I felt absolutely nothing. No satisfaction, no pity. Just a blank void where trust used to live. Dr. Sanders was prosecuted separately. The hidden recording of our consultation, where he built a completely fake diagnosis based on manipulated tests and an invented medical history, was utterly devastating. But what truly destroyed him was when the other victims finally came forward. 7 different cases over the last 10 years, where Dr. Sanders had falsely diagnosed dementia or mental incompetence in exchange for massive payouts. 3 of those victims had already died in institutions, completely unable to fight against the fake diagnoses. 4 had survived, eventually freed, when honest relatives started questioning the medical reports. Every single one of those families testified. Every testimony was another nail in his coffin. Dr. Charles Sanders permanently lost his medical license. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, and in a beautiful stroke of poetic irony, he was ordered to pay full financial restitution to every single victim, a massive total that would leave him completely financially ruined for the rest of his miserable life. Valerie desperately tried to cut a deal. She offered to testify against Sarah in exchange for total immunity. But the prosecutor flat out rejected it. They had way too much evidence against her anyway. The audio recordings of her bragging to her friends about the scheme, the hotel statements proving the 18-month affair, her active role in manipulating Mike. She was sentenced to 8 years, and when her sentence was read aloud, she glared at me with a hatred that rivaled Sarah's. "You destroyed my life," she screamed across the courtroom. "I could have been happy." "You destroyed your own life," I replied calmly, "when you chose to build your happiness on top of my death." Mike. Mike was complicated. My grandson was simultaneously a victim and a villain. A victim of Sarah and Valerie's intense manipulation, but a villain because of his own greedy choices. He cooperated fully, testifying against Sarah and Dr. Sanders. He admitted his involvement and expressed a remorse that actually seemed genuine. Or maybe he was just really good at telling people exactly what they wanted to hear. It was hard to tell with Mike. He had always been highly skilled at that. His sentence was much lighter. 5 years with the possibility of parole after 3, and a strict court order to never contact Valerie again, as she had been revealed as the primary manipulator in their toxic relationship. Faith, the quiet daughter-in-law who always stayed in the background, got 4 years. Her role was minor, mostly just going along with whatever David and the others decided, but she knew about it, and she did absolutely nothing to stop it. And David, my David, he received full immunity in exchange for his testimony against all of them. His testimony was an absolute wrecking ball to the defense. He knew every intimate detail of the plan, every hushed conversation, every decision. But it did not come without a heavy cost. During his testimony on the stand, he broke down crying several times. He admitted his cowardice, his crippling greed, his massive failure as a son, and when he was finally done, he looked right at me and said, "I know you will never forgive me, and you really shouldn't, but you need to know, I love you. I have always loved you. I just didn't love you enough to be strong. I did not say a word that day. I couldn't. The wound was just too deep, too fresh. But today, 6 months later, David is here. He is not living with me. That would be way too much, way too soon. But he visits every single week, bringing my future grandkids who carry zero blame for the ugly sins of their parents. He is actively working in therapy, desperately trying to rebuild, not the person he used to be, but someone much better. And I am allowing it, slowly, cautiously, because he is my son, and because unlike all the others, he actually showed true remorse and a genuine desire to change. "I will never completely trust you again," I told him during our very first conversation after the trials. "I know," he replied, tears streaming down his face, "but I can show you, over time, that I am more than just the worst moment of my entire life." "We will see," I said, and we are seeing. As for my fortune, the $96 million my family was so absolutely desperate to steal, I made some major decisions. First, I recovered the $2 million Sarah had siphoned away. Every single dollar was tracked through offshore accounts and successfully repatriated. Robert White was absolutely ruthless about it. Second, I established a massive protection fund for elderly victims of financial abuse. $2,500,000 generating dividends that actively help people who went through exactly what I almost went through. Free private investigations, top-tier legal representation, and safe housing if needed. It is fully managed by Lucy, who turned out to have an incredible natural talent for legal defense and justice. She quit her job at the restaurant and now dedicates her time completely to managing the fund. We have already helped 17 different people in just 6 months. 17 lives saved. Third, I completely restructured my inheritance.